Lagardere Sports and Entertainment is a child born of acquisition. Lagardere Group is publicly traded in France. It's a family company of sorts run by a man named Arnaud Lagardère. The business is rooted in things like publishing. They own things like Elle Magazine, Hachette Publishing, to like over a third of the world's duty-free centers. So if you've ever traveled internationally or through the Tampa airport, you've probably been through a duty-free center owned by Lagardere Group. The Lagardere Sports and Entertainment division is a pillar of the business that full service, rooted in global football. Our DNA is really kind of at the core of commercial services and the intersection of that business and global football. But when you look at the service offerings across the globe, and we're in over 30 countries, it ranges from commercial services to brand services to media rights services to talent representation. So I am in the global client strategy team, which is really a subsection of our commercial division globally. And really what I do on a daily basis, I work with a lot of our rights holder clients, folks like Borussia Dortmund in the Bundesliga, clubs like FC Augsburg, clubs like Chelsea. And then it really it gets interesting as we look at the last few years. A lot of our new clients are in sectors like eSports. We work a lot with Riot Games, who is the publisher for League of Legends. And another client would be Ubisoft. So a lot of what we do in my team and how we really service the business is overseeing the rights holders strategy. And when we really look at my role, I oversee the rights holder strategy primarily in the US. You know, when properties, teams or clubs, I think sometimes making sure we understand the definition of a property in sports. Really, a property is anything that has value, anything that's defined by its assets. An asset can be tickets. An asset can be something intangible like IP, intellectual property rights. Our team focuses on commercializing, making money, driving revenue for that property through a range of different verticals. So when we look at someone like Borussia Dortmund and our representation in the US, their stadium's not in the US, it's in Dortmund. So we're not selling tickets for the club through our team. We are selling their rights, their IP, through sponsorship. I think IP is typically going to be a driving force in sports for higher sponsorship rates. But there are other verticals or buckets that we would classify as commercial. That could be anything from merchandising and licensing, selling things like the Dortmund hoodie on their fan shop, to media, brokering their media rights deals, whether that be broadcast or streaming or highlights, working with their players to try to drive value through different media access points. And that could be through a digital or social platform. So our business is paid to develop, execute and oversee their English-speaking Twitter and Instagram channels. If anyone's looking for a club to go root for, by the way, in the Bundesliga, I implore you to go check out BVB. So and what's great about having certain disciplines or focuses on product development or platform development is that it then lends to the commercial value. When a club like BVB comes to the US, they're going to generate revenue from a tour. Maybe they come and play a training camp in the summer, and they sell tickets for that. The hope is to probably try to sell some sponsorship, but the goal is to try to also develop platforms that can surround something like a tour that provides some sort of a 360 solution, because folks in the buying community, brands in the buying community, they're buying off of things like impressions, media, exposure, awareness, and those type of things are only going to be, you're only going to get that value off of typically media. Media is a major component of the propensity to spend and invest and have success if you're a brand. You know, just to address that from a macro level first, I think it's really helpful. Before the pandemic, we were at an interesting time. A lot of professional sports, most of which American-based basketball, football, American football. 2021 is a big year. A lot of these media rights deals are terming out, and the rates for these media rights, there's a lot of question is what they'll be. And the reason that is because a lot of the media rights players this time around are new to the game. Amazon, Google, right? Twitch. These players were not at the table offering bids in the last broadcast rights cycle. So from a macro perspective, we're going to watch very closely and see how these media companies play a role in that bid process. And that is a global perspective. And that's particularly in the lanes of really broadcast and streaming. When we kind of dive a little bit deeper, something that I'm really fascinated by and I continue to try to do my own homework and diligence on is the highlight space. A lot of, I guess I'm classified as a millennial. I'm 31 years old. I'm not sure where other folks on this call would classify. I'm sure there's a blend of millennial and Gen Z and our time is valuable, right? And watching a 3-hour baseball game is a lot of time. And there are a lot of folks right now who feel that, my exposure to sports or my consumption of sports, it's better for me to consume through Instagram, right? And following maybe my hero, maybe that's LeBron James. And maybe I'm interested in following what he wears. And I'm much more interested in that than watching him play, in a game against, the Cavs. Or when I go back to the highlights conversation, having that kind of snippet or bite-sized moment to be able to kind of just to capture what actually happened in the game, that 5 minutes. I think you're going to see a lot of players carve out that aspect of media, the highlight space. And you've seen some folks like Turner Sports through Bleacher Report and their acquisition of House of Highlights. There's already been a commitment to have the infrastructure to be able to actually have a platform to host these type of rights. So I'm going to keep a very close eye in that space, because I think, if I'm forecasting 10 years, right, as cords get cut, right, or as cord nevers continue to stay committed to OTT, we're going to really watch and see how your true broadcast and your highlight space, maybe they start to bridge a gap. And that's just that's for me, it's a working thesis, but I think we all need to keep a close eye on just the nature of the length of sports and our time and how we consume sports, and kind of where that all starts to kind of meet as far as the rights fees and because the rights fees are really what's, keeping sports alive. When you think about most of the revenue that they're generating as a league, it's from media. What's really what I love talking about is our prowess in the agency space in relation to esports and gaming, because not only are we successful at driving revenue, but it's a really great story. Our division, we call it a task force of sorts. The task force was born out of 4 young guys in our office in Germany who just got together and saw the trend, built a business plan, and said, go. And I think that's always an exciting story to tell when you're at a corporation like mine, when you're trying to find that entrepreneurial opportunity or that ability to navigate and really drive new business objectives, just a group of people were able to see the trend and develop a service. And so today, that our again, the prowess of our global football rights holder management business, we were able to convert that same process and apply it to esports and gaming and use that as a mechanism to drive revenue for these publishers, for leagues, for teams. And, to the layman's, I think a lot of people, they get intimidated by esports because they look at it at this, I don't know, it's a daunting, landscape. There's a lot of players. You've got publishers, you've got leagues, you've got teams, you've got streamers, you've got casters, brands. There's a lot of, you kind of get lost in the shuffle. I think sometimes the easiest way for me to understand the business is looking at it just from the simplest form. Gaming is a $100 billion business. I would imagine everyone on this Zoom today in some form is a gamer. That could be like my fiance who plays 2 hours of Candy Crush a day to someone who's playing Call of Duty Warzone right now, to anyone that still has an N64 and is dabbling with Super Smash Brothers. You're a gamer, and you're in that $100 billion business, which is primarily driven by publishers, Riot Games, Activision Blizzard, Ubisoft, Epic Games. These are folks that create games like Fortnite, like League of Legends. Nintendo, right, is a publisher. So their esports platform, when you really look at that billion-dollar iceberg of the $100 billion gaming business, and just to kind of really hit you over the head with this, gaming is bigger than sports. It's bigger than music. It's bigger than movies and entertainment. It's massive. And that billion-dollar iceberg is a marketing platform for the publishers and their games. So the actual professional landscape it becomes a platform to draw interest and excitement for the games. If you can understand that, you're already like halfway through. Then you can really start to dive into, where do I watch? How do I watch? Who are really influencing the space? How do publishers, games, leagues, how do they generate revenue? Is it through marketing? Well, sure, there's a little bit of a sponsorship component. Or is it really through plus-ups? Is it through folks paying for skins on Fortnite? That's where they make money. And that's also, when you look at, the $3 million prize pool that was awarded to Bugga for his triumphant victory at the Fortnite finals at Arthur Ashe, that prize pool was generated from you. You guys put that money into the bucket, not a sponsor. So it's a great ecosystem to follow. I implore everybody who, whether you're at kind of level 0 or you're at level maybe 7 or 8. I tell people I'm still at like 6 or 7. I'm learning something new every day. Pick up something and read about gaming and esports. Otherwise, you're going to fall behind. And I'll leave you with that. We have to respect that we all are probably driven by this business through some passion point, right? I had a childhood interest in following the Chicago Bulls with my father, right? In my case, I got to live my dream. I was a Michigan football fan. My father is a podiatrist. He did his residency at a hospital in Detroit. He used to come back with all this Michigan paraphernalia, and I got to go and be in their sports management program. I got to live my dream, but you learn really fast that passion for sports is shared by everybody. So if you're really going to differentiate yourself as someone trying to make that leap into the business community, you really need to start to focus on some sort of discipline. What are you good at? Where do you provide value? And I think when I'm giving advice, or if I'm asking for advice, I still ask for advice from my mentors to this day. It's a learned trait that everyone should always be vulnerable and be interested in cultivating those relationships. But we have to start to realize that that needs to be the norm as it relates to, having that be a complementary asset, because you all have to look at yourselves as an asset going into this, the business world. What's your discipline? Is it sales? Is it marketing? Is it an understanding of the digital landscape? Is it an understanding of data and analytics and how that can somehow be applied to making a brand or an athlete or a sports property smarter? Making sure that you know what your discipline is going to be and where you're going to apply that discipline to the community, the business of sport. Go through that exercise first before you even make a phone call. Now, let me take that back. You should make hundreds of phone calls to ask questions and start to really figure out what maybe where you want to find yourself in the community. But I want to just stress the notion of you want to start to really comprehensively understand that story when you go into an interview. That's maybe what I should have prefaced, right? Is that, we are looking for our agency is looking for all sorts of different specialties, a lot of which I've just mentioned. And you've got to be able to communicate that capability in an interview succinctly. And I have to be able, as a boss or someone hiring, I have to understand how your value is going to plug in day one. So just keep in mind that, those disciplines change. I think new sectors like eSports, like betting, provide new opportunities, lots of them, and they typically will need all sorts of, I would say traditional roles, but they also present new unique roles. Like look at betting, for example, right? I mean, they're looking for more analysts, people that are sitting on the desk and reading trend reports. That's not something that I specialize in, but we work with betting operators. So I feel a unique understanding of the types of DNA that a betting operator is trying to hire. So just don't forget, the world is much bigger than the NFL, the Knicks, the Miami Dolphins. There's just you don't work at a company like DAZN or Bleacher Report or PointsBet, our client, PointsBet, awesome company. Wow, they present really unique opportunities in the business of sport that probably are going to get you somewhere much faster than if you go work in a mailroom at CAA. I hate to knock CAA, but there's just a different perspective from my vantage point now that I'm 10 years into the business. I'm a big proponent of desk research and just diligence. I read a ton, all kinds of stuff, trade information, stock reports, everything. And for me, that has always been a vehicle to improve my corporate development skills, my sales and business development skills. So the reason I mention that is because I think I go back to a lot of what I do today and how a lot of it's similar over the last 10 years. It allowed me to find different areas and disciplines that I was interested in. So I guess to answer your question, there's definitely something that you just feel it in you when you're reading something about marketing. Maybe if you think you're starting to have an interest in how sports changes or impacts consumer behavior. I think if you're really starting to feel, I want to be in that silo of why does Coca-Cola, when they pay for an Olympics partnership, how does that make people drink more Coca-Cola? Or does it make people drink more Coca-Cola? If you're asking those questions, you're a marketer and you should seek a marketing opportunity. If you're someone that's interested in, the conversation we had earlier about, will people be watching more sports on broadcast, or will Amazon start to be a player, right? Maybe you should pursue media. And although I think those are sectors and we look at roles like sales or marketing, I really think, in order to have certain opportunities in something like data analytics, you need to have experience. The only way you're really going to get a job like that is to have tangible experience in that space. And I think in order to know if you're qualified, you have to, I'd say, lean on your professors and lead on your mentors, but always seek out information and always seek out new areas, new sectors, because sometimes you find that it opens up, it gives you a new perspective. And I guess if I'm applying it to my own experience, I'm only about 4 years into the business development landscape of global football through my previous role at RSC Ventures. And now it's like it's built into me, and I understand a little bit more of the landscape, and I try to take that understanding and apply it to my corporate development and business development roles. So I hope that answers your question. I think if you're someone that's looking for something in sales and marketing, you got to be able to rap. As I tell people, you got to have rap skills. And if you're someone that's a little more introverted and a little more interested on the back end, there are lots of really interesting analytic roles that teams now invest quality resources into. So go on that exploration and know that you can pivot at any time. I'm fortunate enough to have access to industry trades like SportCal and Sport Pro Media, because I'm in a global sports role. Mm-hmm. Having an understanding of the global sports landscape is so important. I think SBJ, in a lot of its, a lot of kudos to SBJ for really building, I think, the business of sports trades, right? People talk about it as if it's the Wall Street Journal of sports business. But what's great is that it's created new platforms like Front Office Sports, which I hope a few people on here are at least exposed or are giving that a read. Adam White and those guys have done a tremendous job. They've been able to now convert, equity with professionals and industry leaders into things like podcasts, which, I think my interest in podcasts has increased exponentially in just the last 12 months. I live in Manhattan, so I take the 6 train, about 7 stops in the morning. And, sometimes it's not so easy to read on your phone or read a book, but it's sometimes easy to listen to a podcast. And maybe that's a little bit of PMT for me, a little part of my take Barstool for those Barstool sports fans out there. But sometimes it's Front Office Sports. So listen, I reference PMT because those are equally as important trade information, in my opinion. It's meant to be humorous. But if you don't look at the power that Barstool Sports has really brought to how fans, our fans, right? How you guys look at sports and entertainment, then you're missing something, right? I'm not saying you have to watch Barstool or listen to their content or be a fan of the content, but if you don't respect it and you don't respect the business, you're missing a trend that is really starting to show that if you're a media company, maybe you don't need to pay billions of dollars for rights to generate fan interest. Maybe you don't. Maybe Dave Portnoy figured it out. Will they be successful in 10 years or will they look the same? I don't know. But I'll tell you, selling portions of their company to companies like Penn National, if you're asking me, brilliant. Probably kudos to Erica, but I mean, without going off on a tangent about Barstool Sports, I think the mediums in which, or the platforms in which I consume my information really is wide, very wide. And it's because you need different perspectives too. If I read SBJ every day, I'd probably, I might as well just, I don't know, without coming up with some silly metaphor, like you start to have a really linear focus, which if you're in any business whatsoever, as my mother always told me, there's 3 sides to every story. And I think in this business more than ever, that's true. Certainly if you're going to be in a role where you're either compensated or your success is a measurement of reading or forecasting months or years in advance. If you're in ticket sales, maybe it's very maybe there's certain, platforms you need to be focused on, or sponsorship, right? But media, right? Consumption behavior. I look for McKinsey reports on fashion. I think fashion is such a huge area that's converging into sports. And apologize for digressing here. For me, it brings up a lot of real feelings that I'm having right now in this pandemic, that if I come out of this and I didn't learn 20 different new things about my business, then I failed at myself. I hope that measures up to your expectations as far as where I consume. My verdict's not out on that space. I can tell you, inside baseball, at least from our talent representation team, I don't know if there's been a lot of huddling up yet on figuring out, whether agencies like ours will play in that space. I think there's a gray area and a fine line that at least our guys on the talent representation side, Joel and Steve Lloyd, coach who represents Phil, they have to be very careful at how they tread in that space. But it's something we all have to keep a close eye on for sure. I'd love to answer almost the initial point about the youth participation element. And I think, you're going to hear me keep harping on this. I go back to media a lot. Businesses like Overtime, for example, if you're not familiar with Overtime, and Zach and Dan Porter that run that company, they've created a media platform now for athletes like Zion Williamson before he became, a Dookie and then a Pelican, to be able to really showcase who these athletes are. And I think watching that space mature and how that lends to amateurism, how athletes use that, amateur athletes, how they take advantage of those media platforms that are now available to them. TikTok, right? We all probably at least are familiar with TikTok, maybe even more than I am. And there are probably going to be a lot. I think it was Gary Vee and his brother AJ that may have mentioned this. Like, I think there's going to be, a number of athletes who come into college who are more famous on TikTok than they are on the court. And I think we really have to, that's a realistic thing. And for me, I'm probably one of the least traditionalists of sports, meaning somebody see that and go, whoa, that's scary. Like, another thing that Gary and AJ, I think one of the things they made, they forecasted, like, they think in the next 5 years, you'll see a male athlete wear makeup, some sort of, makeup to a stadium. I'm not afraid of that. I think that's exciting. I think that's new. I think it's a behavior and a pattern that's it's a cause and effect of the fans and the consumers. So I think as agencies, we are keeping a very close eye on that. I love talking to the guys at Overtime, and I love understanding what is in the DNA of these fans, maybe more so than I am of the boomers and the Generation X, our parents, and how they consume sports, because although they are the ones that drive broadcast, we are going to be the ones that really drive the future of sport. And that's, in order to make money, we are the fans that those leagues and teams and agencies need to keep a close eye on. Athletes and the mechanism in which athletes make money, endorsements, right? Player appearances, things like that. It's really on the players. I mean, it's on the agents to participate in that realm, but I think more and more we're going to see athletes have way more oversight and control over their own platforms and their understanding of the platforms and how they can be leveraged to, raise their profiles, increase opportunities for brand participation. You have to put it on your own shoulders. Agencies will play a role in that in some form. Whether we'll see that more, again, going back to your original point, I don't know I have not been in a meeting yet where we've talked about, hey, are we going to go work with that athlete? Who's the Jalen Green? We're not in basketball, so we wouldn't be talking about Jalen Green, right? But I haven't been in a room like that yet. And that's just me. I'm not on the talent side. Probably a better question for Joel and his team, Jeff Garmhausen. But, the way I look at it, the thing that I also makes me nervous in a lot of ways is youth participation, which is down. We have to keep in mind that that's a real trend. I guess I'm dancing around your question because I may not have the right answer for you, but I think it's something that you should explore. I mean, I don't know if there's a window for agencies to serve in like an advisory capacity for youth athletes that are trying to figure out who they are, because there's such a gray area right now through amateurism. It's probably a little less gray when it comes to marketing versus, on the field, but definitely go seek out that type of information. But I would also just go be mindful of going and making sure you're aware of the platforms that are available to these guys. And that's, in my mind, it's TikTok, it's Overtime, it's Instagram. Yeah. You got to respect those two markets for the industry. It's sports and entertainment, right? That doesn't mean that markets like Dallas present a lot of unique opportunities in agencies, in teams. I mean, you got to respect what Jerry Jones has done as a pillar of sport, not just as the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, but his ownership of Legends. And if you're not familiar with Legends, they're they're a big service agency for the construction of the new Raiders stadium and the impending SoFi stadium in LA. So, yeah, listen, New York and LA definitely dominate in the US. But what I've definitely learned in my year here is the world is much bigger. It is so much bigger. I think if you have an opportunity to go get a job in London or Germany or Asia, and primarily somewhere like Singapore, China we're watching things kind of play out with China and the NBA, for example, where it's a little bit, it's pretty much do not touch right now between those two, between China and the NBA. But if we wanted to maybe best answer your question in the US, I think even though that there is a saturation for sure, and there's probably this feeling of, if I'm not willing to move to New York, LA, like, where do I go? Do not fear. There are great roles in many markets like Dallas, like Washington, D.C. And you should really watch as new owners come into sports. Someone like David Tepper, I was just reading today, he may be moving his headquarters to Rock Hill, South Carolina, right? That's a guy who owns he's a hedge fund manager, right? Comes in, he's most wealthy owner immediately in the league as he comes in, right? My guess is a lot of what he's going to do is not just try to win football games on the field. He's going to try to create urban development in the Carolinas at large, and not just through football, through soccer, through his new MLS team. So just be mindful that, sports and the opportunities as they kind of overlay with development. That's, I think, what becomes you see a lot of really cool, unique opportunity. There's still a little bit of we don't know where things are going to net out in Nashville, but wow, Nashville is a hot sports market, really hot sports market. And, if you want great roles, you got to go to somewhere like LA right now, because there's an Olympics coming in 2028. And you want to go be a participatory person in that role or in that development. They need lots of great, smart people for now and through 2028. So I appreciate the question. I just think, this is where I'll be harsh. I don't know what everyone's different passion levels are for growth in industry. I'm ambitious. I want to go. I want to win. So if it means picking up and moving and going to a job in Wyoming, maybe that's not the right place for me, but if there was the right role, I'd go get it. I want it. You have to go chase a good role. And don't be afraid, because obviously there's complexities of maybe marriage or kids, but if you want to make it in this business, you need to be able to take a leap and maybe be uncomfortable. And forgive me for being, I can't help when I tap into my kind of storytelling mindset, but almost similar to how I shared the kind of trajectory of the $1 billion eSports with the $1 billion iceberg. Betting, right? The whole business of sports betting as it relates to the US, okay? And since the overturn of PASPA, which, if anyone's not familiar with that, they repealed a law that essentially placed the decision for whether betting would be legal at the state level versus the federal level. The whole business is to take 150 conservatively to probably closer to like $190 billion and rise it from the shadows. That's betting. So when you think about that market, an addressable market, it's huge, it's massive. One more quick kind of complimentary point to that is it's ongoing. So we're kind of, you'll hear a lot of different people, they'll say, if you go to a conference, they'll be like, we're in the first inning. We're probably somewhere like in that really early stages because we just don't have the full state penetration yet. And not only do we not have full mass penetration in the US, there are also some states that really present some limitations as it relates to which operators are able to have a license in that state. Tennessee only allows mobile. Jersey has a great policy. Pennsylvania, not so much. New York is really not so great right now. I say that because in our agency plays in that space. We serve in a market entry advisory role, primarily for over operators that are looking to take advantage of the repeal in the US and to an extent now in Latin America. We're also seeing some more restrictions and shrinking of the betting in Europe, which a lot of our relationship equity is with these operators overseas. And those type of services stem from everything from helping them lobby with gaming commissions, helping them find a lawyer to ask, to address Adrian's original question, right? If you want to go, I actually may even know a legal role out in Colorado for our client points that we should talk offline. We are helping them in a marketing capacity, but not just marketing services, hiring marketing people, right? Every operator is doing it differently, and there's going to be a lot of race to the bottom of sorts. When I say race to the bottom, it's because there's going to be a lot of people that they try to capture that haven't already bet. They're trying to get new customers, but right now you're seeing just this place where it's how can I just kind of get in the right state, have a license, be able to operate, and have some market share, and that's being driven by the states and how they legalize. So we as an agency have to be very up to speed, not just with the state's policy, but the league's policies as well. All the league's policies are different, and they are changing. Like that, and NFL's little inside baseball, they started kind of really adapting theirs in December a little bit. Whereas like something like the NHL, it's a little more open. So yeah, it's we could talk about that for hours, and I'm happy to stay after for a little bit after this hour. I want to make sure I give you my time here, guys. But it's a fascinating space that we as an agency fortunately have several decades really of relationship equity with these operators from our work in Europe and Asia. You're not going to like this answer, right? But I think you really need to apply that 5-year to 10-year career trajectory to really be able to answer that question, right? I think, if your dream is to be the commissioner of the NBA one day, you probably would benefit from a law degree or a business degree, or maybe both. JD MBA sounds pretty great, right? I think, with sports, it's interesting. I've seen people that have gotten legal degrees and then they've gone and become a marketer. And I asked the question, like, why did you get a legal degree? And I think they would probably tell you it just gives them a unique perspective on marketing through a legal lens. And I respect that. I really do. I myself don't have any graduate degrees. I was always someone that just wanted to get to work and wanted to, to be, somehow in the business. And I actually started my own company because I was way more fascinated about writing a business plan, building an operating agreement with someone like you, Adrian, guiding me through that process, right? So those were things that, for me, helped me guide my decision making. But usually, there's really no black and white answer, I don't think, right? I mean, you got to be smart on where you want to go. Those who have a good head on their shoulders and know that, and you won't hear me tell you not to dream. You want to go be a commissioner? Fine. Probably you need to go get some graduate level degree, and you probably need to go find the right role, the right boss that's going to help you really navigate early on. These are real things. I mean, in this business too, I hate to tell you, like I'm a product in a lot of ways sometimes of riding a few coattails here and there, and taking advantage of smart people in the business that were also great. They were great leaders in their way. I just got to be a part of that. So finding the right discipline, one thing. Finding the right company that has great growth and, great structure and great culture, two. Finding the right boss, very important. So important. The age of endorsement deals and marketing deals for athletes is I think we're hitting an end. And not that you won't see endorsement deals, but how they're structured, the actual economic structure of the deals, and who's paying for the deals. I think media companies you're going to see a lot more of them pay for some asset, looking at an athlete as a property, as rights, right? Media companies will continue to look to athletes to serve in some sort of a media platform because they are. Look at LeBron. I mean, he is a media juggernaut. He owns Spring Hill Entertainment, which is, tied to Uninterrupted. He's got a show on NBC. I don't know the name of it offhand. Like him and Maverick, they are a empire of sorts. And they just posted, I think, on maybe Uninterrupted's Instagram the other day, like all of the streaming platforms, right? That they right now are involved in. It's pretty fascinating. They're Quibi, they're on ESPN Plus, and so I mention that because media deals are way more unique than, in a lot of ways, like your standard endorsement deals. So what I was telling Joel was, if we're, as a business, we're really only servicing our athletes on the field and through, this landscape of, helping them go to get a deal with Nike. The reality is, you know what, guys? A lot of those deals kind of they call us. Nike wants Khalil Mack, they call us. We're not calling them, they're calling us. But if we want to go get smart deals for our guys that have, and I'm going to use verbiage here, tails or kickers, things that are, revenue buckets that are somehow tied to other, it could be, associated with app downloads, or it could be tied to certain customer acquisition costs. Those end up sometimes being the smartest deals because you're hedging a little bit. You're betting on your athlete somehow generating a lot of buzz and a lot of interest and sales in these deals. And sometimes I think media, in a lot of ways, or at least companies or brands that leverage their own media as a way in the deal, I think someone with an NBA background is probably going to be way more versed on different structures, different ways of looking at a marketing or media deal. So listen, don't have one, but you want to go get an MBA and you want to come and be in sports, there's lots of opportunity, promise you. On the talent side, 1,000%. 1,000%. Guys like Joel, they don't want more Joels. I mean, meaning like they are, and he's probably listening. I promise you he is. They are, that the top 1% is they've gotten to where they got to. And I don't think they're ready for, unfortunately, the chase of the world to kind of nip at their heels, but you can add value to their business by having a different perspective. And I think a lot of ways people with MBAs provide that type of unique perspective. Endemic versus non-endemic. The way that esports looks at endemics are people that are somehow brands that are somehow built into the infrastructure of esports. Even narrowing that down, whittling that down further, peripherals. You may hear the word peripheral. A peripheral is essentially anything that is somehow complementary from like an input and output perspective to the PC or the console on which they're playing. So an audio peripheral could be a headset, right? Non-endemics, companies like BMW, and a deal like that gets done because our offices are working across continents and countries and offices to communicate to a very large corporation like BMW at the value of a position like that. I think with BMW, what's been great to look at companies like BMW, and as we've helped them really write the script of what their esports and gaming positioning is going to be, it takes a lot of unique geographical perspectives to really create buy-in. And what I mean by that is, particularly in this space, there's still probably, I would say 60%, I'm making this number up. I bet you over 50% of the buying community still won't touch it. They still won't touch esports and gaming because they're fearful of either not understanding the space or some of the complexities of the space or some of the, quote unquote, violence of the space in certain first-person shooter games. So that deal gets done because there's been a lot of time and effort and commitment to sit at the table with BMW to help them write their position and their thesis and their strategy towards the space. And it has to be looked at. It can be looked at complementary to the overall marketing strategy, but I think we found that these strategies are championed by visionaries, by leaders and titans in business that aren't afraid of what gaming and esports means to the Gen Z community. But it gets done because our offices in Germany, in the UK, and in Asia, I got to give all three of them the most credit. We're talking with each other every day for several months, and they were championing through leadership within each office for several, meaning BMW's headquarters in Germany, their office in Asia, their office in Europe, helping everyone understand the value of an unprecedented position like this. It's a lot of work. I'm probably 75% at a minimum servicing my international business. I get up at, I'm a creature of habit, or I feel my phone like vibrate, or I just can sense it at this point. And 2:30 a.m. here could be 8:30 in an office, in Europe. Like, I'm finding myself up at weird hours. And a lot of what we're doing here, Zoom and Skype, I've been doing that since I took this job. So I'm used to this. This is comfortable for me. I work a lot with our international offices daily, and it's something that I'm really appreciative of because it really has given me a totally new outlook on sport, more in this year than in my entire career. The world is just so much bigger. And I've been grateful to have chances to go to these countries and actually, feel, touch, smell sports culture. Man, I wouldn't trade that for the world. I think if you guys, can have an opportunity to go participate or work or intern in one of these places, man, I bet you'll be better served when you then go and interview at that job at the NFL, because the NFL, they're looking at places like Germany. We already know they're looking at places like the UK, but they're looking at Germany. They're looking at Mexico. You go and say, I interned in Germany for a summer. Oh, we love Germany. We're going to Germany. You could provide a lot of value. And that goes back to the first thing we talked about. And that kind of, that puzzle, that how to get to where I want to go, you got to know where these companies are going. So, with me and our esports, we're definitely a creature of the pandemic to a degree with gaming and esports, and a lot of just, the activity going on right now for sure has been great. But we're right now we're talking every day, constantly. And we're watching things like what's going to happen with Valorant, right? We're watching as this new game that Riot Games put out. Like what's going to happen there, right? I'm watching things like the Flashpoint League, Counter-Strike Go, and it's a different league structure where, and you'll have to forgive me, guys, I'm sure I'm throwing things like Counter-Strike and Valorant. You just jot the note down and go read about it after. I promise you it's worth the exercise if you don't know it. Leagues like Counter-Strike Go like Flashpoint League, where instead of the publisher owning the league, the teams own the league, and how they're going to take that platform and convert to potentially betting operators participating in those leagues. These are the things that they're changing every day right now. Every day. I'm in new meetings or new calls, getting new information on policy that will probably move business over the next 6 months.